Hey everyone, this is the Dea Divi. So, I'm going to read you a new one for the first, actually it's in a book series in its own right called The Willow Maiden of Western Creek, and the first book is called Fallen Leaves. So, I'm going to read to you the first chapter only out of this series here. It's going to be broken up in parts. This is something that I wrote, and this is one of my published works from Evermore Divine Publishing. So, I'm going to read to you 1. Grass over the small trees as the birds perched on many of them. A dark large willow stood at the higher edge of the grass, and it peaked with intertwined leaves that blew in the wind. Dark vines masked the shades over the massive fruits that overlapped over the ground, and dozens of creatures flourished over the willow's trunk. The encompassing roots rivaled over the other trunks of trees that were near it. A silent chime echoed in the background as the emerald eyes of the forest watched in the distance as the vines moved back and over the willow diligently as the summer wind heated the winter with cold. Time stood still over the beating willow tree as the dark curves and small plants married to the wood. Many birds flapped their wings as the sun reached over the massive willow that stood in the forgotten part of Western Creek. The silence of the grass twirled back and forth as the winds carried the sound of the outside world. The green eyes shimmered in the distance as the vines moved over it like seas of foam. The eyes faded in the background as the winds pulled to the east, and fallen leaves flew as the eyes mystified as it disappeared near the willow tree. The green eyes appeared once more and stood with the young maiden, whose eyes shined like the sun, and long, bright, fiery red hair floated in the wind, rippling around her as she wore a green dress. Her pale skin were that of milk and honey as her cherry lips tasted the air and raised her hand to the clouds forming in the sky. And the maiden stood on the large ever-growing tree root that seemed to come to life with her touch. She was petite and had an angelic voice, and the maiden held her arms together and touched her chest as she seemed to drift with the wind as it around her. Sounds of distance, Western Creek, call to me, and I shall be your bearer. I will never fade from what is and not. Sounds of the distance, Western Creek, call to me, and I shall be your Raleigh. I shall hear your words and call to the life that is within mine. With every ending there is a beginning. I am here with the sounds of Western Creek. I am the maiden of Western Creek. I shall be the bearer of your tales and wonder and splendor. I will never fade from what is and not. Sounds of Western Creek, west sounds of the distant Western Creek, call to me, and I shall reach out to you. To find me, and I shall carry my voice to you, to the wind. I have everything within my home in the forest. I am near the sounds of the creek, sounds of the distant Western Creek. Call to me, and I shall meet with you. The young maiden continued to sing, and with a pure voice that chimed across the creek. The grass continued to move about as if the maiden, listening to the maiden who enchanted it. Many other animals looked up at the maiden of the willow tree as she turned her eyes back to the creek and smiled, for the small creek around was laid untouched as the world passed them by, and she stepped back into the roots and vines that shielded her, and dozens of leaves moved back and forth, filtering the sky. Some small plants released spores and seeds, and the winds carried the next generation. And the winds, and she continued to smile through the vines as her eyes shined in the background. So that is part one of The Willow Maiden of Western Creek, Fallen Leaves, part one. I'm going to read the first chapter. Next one. Dea Divi out. And it's under me.